Hello, I'm Dr. Keith Beasley, and I'd like to share with you some of the insights and ideas we have beyond thought today about how we human beings are evolving, in particular in how we think, in our consciousness. So I'm looking at the evolution of consciousness. But let's first take a step back and review where we think we are in terms of human beings as a species, in terms of our evolution generally. And, well, we're probably all familiar with the evolutionary shifts. So way back we had the Industrial Revolution. Gradually it started with just a few things happening, and gradually things took off, and at some point they settled down and we were used to having industrial machines. So this was the spinning jenny, the arkwright train, the very first weaves and looms that were powered by water, then by steam. So this was the evolution of our technology, way back, well, only a few hundred years ago, so very recent in human terms, in the history of time, but quite a long time ago in terms of the speed at which things are changing now. And then let's go back to, well, my age. I'm 58, and in 1958 we had the very first transistors, the beginning of the electronics revolution. So we can actually date this. Let's put this, 1958. And from that very first start, gradually transistors, then integrated circuits, gradually developed in terms of the technology which fuels the Industrial Revolution. And it's still going on apace. We still see no end to the change that is happening there. How far along we are, we don't know. But let's say that's electronics. And then let's look at the IT. And we can probably date the start of that to the first digital telephone exchanges. Remember back in the 70s you had to dial your phone, you picked it up and it would make bip 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 noises. Now it's all digital. And I was part of that revolution. I worked for Plessey, which was one of the UK companies working with British Telecom, and I was part of a team that designed and built the silicon chips, the ICs, integrated circuits that went in the very first digital telephone exchange, which would have been around 1980, that sort of order. So let's say 1980, this is when IT started. And again, slowly up there and gradually picked up. And so these two trends are still going. But if you look at where we are now, compared to even only 35 years ago, then there was no digital television, there was no HD TV, there was no video cameras like this that I'm using. All that has happened is in 35 years. Now, where's this taking us? Is it all just technology and science for the sake of it? Well, I don't think so. I think it's teaching us some really useful things. So, for example, what lessons are we learning? Let's look at lessons learning. Alright, lessons being learned because it's an ongoing process. And I like this being because that's to do with being actively engaged in life, in being part of the evolution, of the unfolding of what it means to be human. Well, lessons being learned. So there's some positive lessons in that they're part of our greater unfolding as whole beings. So we're beyond thought. We're concerned with our deep unfolding, becoming not just more aware, more technologically advanced, but more spiritually advanced, more true to ourselves and interconnected into the world. So I'm going to look at two facets of this. So this is the deeper evolution, And then the other facets are perhaps the negative aspects, how the evolutionary trend is appealing to our ego, to our arrogance, and the idea that man is better than anything or anybody else. So let's put this the lesson of where we are in terms of our negative traits. And if we look at those, there are different levels. So electronics. So if we look at what we've been gaining from these various shifts in our consciousness, in our growing awareness and development as human beings, electronics is all to do with what's happening at the electron level. So what we're getting is an insight into the world of quantum physics. The electrons, what's happening at the not just the atomic level but the subatomic level. And that's taking us down into the fundamental elements of life, the fundamental energy of life. So rather than get attached to conventional mechanics and momentum and things that we can touch and feel, this is really helping us to understand what's happening deep down at the sub-micron level, thousands of a millimetre, what's happening down there and at even smaller dimensions. And anyone who's looked at all at quantum physics will know that it's all about probabilities. It's all about, well, there's all this potential, and at any given moment, depending on whether we're looking at it, how we're trying to measure it, and all these other factors will determine whether or not something is true. So by exploring electronics, by going into these technologies and the science behind them, we are helping to become aware of, and in some respects to experience, the quantum world, the world at the really microscopic level, and often at the super scale, at the scale of the universe. And often there is a parallel, one reflecting the other, the so-called holographic effect, as above so below. So and when we start looking at whether it's what's happening in space, looking at the evolution of our planet, or whether we're looking at electronics, and we're seeing what's happening at this quantum level. At quantum level, anything is possible. Anything. Something will be flowing along quite nicely, something will happen somewhere else, the other side of the universe, and flip, it will change states. It will change states just as an LED is about a changing state of an electrons. So by this exploration, by engaging in true science, in exploring the limits of what we know, then we are learning about the real core of life. And many of you who have followed the work at CERN in Switzerland will be familiar with the Higgs boson. And that scientists are now saying is, whether it's a particle, whether it's an energy, it doesn't matter, it's underlying absolutely everything. And me, although I'm an electronics engineer, I'm also a Reiki master teacher, I'm quite happy to say, well, scientists are now calling it the Higgs boson, I'll call it Reiki. I'll call it the energy of life. Let's not get too caught up on what we call it. But the idea that underlying absolutely everything else in every bit of time and space, there is an interconnecting something. And that really opens up our understanding of what life's about and what is possible. And anything is possible, particularly when we look at the subatomic level. But of course, as we're developing our electronics, we're becoming dependent on it. We're having the idea that, oh, we can understand everything. So the negative traits is, let's say, arrogant beliefs. Please excuse my spelling, I've got a feeling that's wrong, but spelling really doesn't bother me. I do apologise to those who are affected by it. So that's there, and then if we look at IT, and IT has fueled the whole of the internet revolution. And through the internet we're connecting to other people all over the world. And we're beginning to realise that, well, actually, irrespective of where we might be, irrespective of our culture, we're all humans. We all actually want to feel we belong. We all want to be loved. We all have similar issues. So a positive thing coming from the IT revolution is that we're all human beings. But of course the IT and the global revolution is fueling even more want it now, must have the biggest, the latest, the best. So it's all the excessiveness of well, anything and everything. So there's nothing good or bad inherently about any of these evolutionary traits. There are some very positive aspects of them, but there's also some negatives. So let's just be aware of that. Okay, so that's what's been happening, and we might add on to here, so a more recent one might be artificial intelligence, for example. Again, if we look at it, we can see some positive aspects in that as we look at artificial intelligence, it's helping us to question what we mean by intelligence. It's helping us to be aware of our own innate wisdom as well as the rational conscious thought. So all of these different things are part of a bigger picture. They're part of humanity's growth, both as individuals and as a species. What we're talking about at Beyond Thought is an evolution in our whole consciousness, in how we think. And where might that start? Let's have a look at another evolutionary set of shifts. And let's go back to, say, the 1960s, where we first had the idea of free love, of peace, of just a different way of thinking, of C&D, campaign for nuclear disarmament, and questioning some of the conventional ways of looking at things. And so from some of these early movements developed all sorts of NGOs and campaigns and helped us to think about human beings as interconnected beings, of people with feelings, of part of the ecosystem. So it's the idea of interconnectedness, and that would certainly be, as I see it, an integral part, a forerunner of Beyond Thought. So this would just be, well, let's call it the sort of alternative thinking and therapies. So way back here, that's when we started getting interested in massage, in reflexology, in crystals, and all these different forms of therapies, and where the idea of holistic health first originated. So maybe in the 1990s. Again, don't take me too literally on the dates, that's not important. But then we started talking about holistic, and then a bit later about integrated health. And with each of these, we started becoming more aware of the different things that influence our state of health and well-being. We started realising that to be healthy, we need a healthy mind, we need our spirit to be actively involved. That we needed to integrate our health with our social care. We needed to bring some arts, some singing, some acting, some expression of who we are alongside eating well and having feeling safe and secure in our homes. All these things we realise are part of who and what we are. And so just in the last 50 or 60 years, all these things have been added to our level of awareness, of involvement. So what we're talking about now in 2016, as I write this, the people that I researched in my thesis are the forerunners, the pioneers, the early examples of those who have consciously said, hang on a minute, all these things are stepping stones. All these things are stepping stones to me as an individual human being and humanity as a species fulfilling our true potential. We often hear it say that we're only using a very small fraction of our mental capacity, that we have extra strands of DNA that we're not using. So what's happening as we're beginning to use more of our brain capacity? To open it up and realise that it's not just the rational bit that's important, that we can be connected inherently into what's happening globally, what's happening environmentally, and by taking that active participation, so we become truly evolved human beings, we become fully conscious. We're a long way from it yet, we're only just now starting this, or maybe we have been for a while, but at a very small level. But we're at this cusp. We're now consciously saying we can change. We can undo our bad habits. We can shift how we think away from logically analysing it, away from trying to control everything, and being with the flow of the universe. And that is what is happening. Let's call this the beyond thought. And again, it may be just one of many other trends and things that are happening, but it's a trend towards recognising that our rational minds have actually got us into many of the problems that we face in the world today, be it obesity or antisocial behaviour or environmental problems caused by climate change. They all result from the fact that we become disconnected from our true nature, from our bodies, from the world around us, from each other, from our true feelings, from our inner needs. Beyond thought is the evolution of how we think and feel and are truly becoming true human beings, truly connected into our core self and the energy of life and the ultimate potential coming from the quantum effects. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about the next wave of consciousness, the next wave of awareness of becoming true, whole and real. And this one, whereas many of these others have tended to emphasise the rational mind and disconnect us from our core sense of self and the love and compassion that are part of being humans, now we're coming back to that. We're recognising our innate wisdom and our feeling natures. I look forward to sharing more with you another time.